and gentlemen, TARAtory!
Well, hey, y'all, hey! I said, hey, y'all, hey! There we go. Oh, my gosh, I have a question. Where are my Gen Xers and baby boomers at? Where are my people at? Make some noise. You are my people, my tribe. But y'all, it goes by fast, doesn't it? 1 minute you're young, you can eat what you want, you can hang out past 9, your joints don't hurt when the weather changes. Next thing you know, you're scheduling your colonoscopy, your shingles vaccine, and you realize that you're now eligible for Colonial Penn life insurance. I'm like, where did the time go? And I don't know about you, but people always like to remind you that you're getting old. I'm a proud woman of a certain age, but people like to remind me. Like, you know, when I turn on the television and it goes straight to closed captioning. I'm like, I can hear that. I didn't need help, DirecTV and Vizio. Mind your business. I got it. But I tell you, when I realized I reached the peak level of middle-agedness, I was in the airport and I was a little cold. I was chilly. And I said, oh, it's cold here. And I said, wait a minute. I got socks in my purse. I keep socks in my purse now, people. That's where I'm at with this. And I'll tell you this is how I knew I was getting older. I was at my old office, and in our workplace kitchen, they have a common area where they keep snacks, like cookies and cakes. And the week after Easter, there was 2 things in that common area. There were those Marshmallow Peeps candy. They were fruit punch flavor. I'd never had those. And then, y'all, there were 1,000 milligram of fish oil tablets. I grabbed those fish oil tablets so hard, because I'm like, that's what my jam. But I tell you, that's my jam. But I tell you this, I'm at the point where I get my prescriptions from Walmart, and I'm on a first name basis with my pharmacist. I don't know about anybody else. So one day I'm there and I'm getting my prescription and I'm checking out, and I also have a Kit Kat Duo, because I like a Kit Kat. And the pharmacist looks at me and says, you know that's not any good for you, right? And I said, well, look at here, Ernest. I feel like you're judging me right now. Why don't you just go back there and fill my diabetes medication and let's not talk about it? I ain't come for all that judgment. But as we know, the process is pretty simple when you get a prescription from Walmart. They ask you for your last name and your date of birth. I say Brown, 3/11/69. Y'all, one day I'm there, and the cashier asks a gentleman for his last name, and he goes, Vladishlenko. And y'all, he just stared at her like he had said Smith or Jones. And I'm like, you're not gonna help her spell that? No rhymes with? Or sounds like? Does she need to buy a vowel? Or phone a friend? But y'all, I realized this was not my business, so I just got my Kit Kat Duo on my Ozempic and I just left. I'm still waiting for that weight loss part to kick in. I don't know. But I went to visit my mom recently, and she lives in the rural part of North Carolina. So they have a pharmacy, it's a little mom and pop pharmacy there. And I was there getting her prescription, and I noticed they have a sign that says, we sell pork rinds, all flavors, yum, yum. Now, I need somebody to explain to me how it's not a conflict of interest to get pork rinds out the same place you get blood pressure medication from. But then I thought about it, it's actually pretty genius. Like, you eat the pork rinds, you raise your blood pressure, and you need more medicine, right? I'm like, well played, well played. But now, as was said, I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I heard some woo-woos for Tennessee. Where my people at? Do you live in Nashville? You from Nashville? South, okay. So I live in Nashville, and I moved there from Charlotte, North Carolina about a year ago. And my first night in Nashville, I met one of my neighbors, and I thought I was parked too close to her car, and I offered to move my car over. And she said, actually, you'd be doing me a favor if you hit my car. And I'm like, wow, my first night here, and I got invited to participate in insurance fraud. I don't think that's what the founders had in mind when they called Tennessee the volunteer state. I don't think they were going for that. And then, you know, ladies know when you move to a new city, you have to find new things. Like I was looking for a new nail salon. And I found one, and I'm sitting next to another customer, and turns out she was a female doctor. And I love female doctors. All my doctors are female. And she turns to me and says, I'm thinking about getting rhinestones on my nails. What do you think? I said, I think that depends on what kind of doctor you are. Because if you're a proctologist or a gynecologist, I gotta tell you, I don't want you with the rhinestones on your nails. I tell you what, I'm so happy that we are in a new year. We made it to another year. Give it up for yourselves for making it to a new year. Isn't that great? And I don't know if you all got these types of emails at the end of last year, these end of year recap emails. For instance, American Airlines sent me an email, said, this is how many miles you've flown with us last year. And I said, wow, great, I've been some places. And then Hilton Hotel said, here's how many nights you've stayed with us. I said, again, cool. But y'all, I didn't think that everybody needed to get in on this end of year recap thing. For instance, I didn't need Jimmy John's. Sending me an end of year recap sandwich report. Because truthfully, the number of times I ordered a number 9 Italian nightclub with no oil and vinegar but extra basil and oregano, that was between me, my debit card, and the Lord. And I'm pretty sure it's like a HIPAA violation. I tell you what, I'm just glad Chipotle didn't get in on that, because my carne asada numbers were through the roof last year. They were through the roof. But I tell you this, I just got back from a trip from Jamaica. Anybody been to Jamaica before? Jamaica folks? Great country. And I learned a lot when I was there. I learned that the women there, they're hustlers. They're trying to get their money. And so I was out looking at a woman who had a shop, and I was just browsing, and she says very loudly, come on in, we got t-shirts, even in your size. What are you, like a 3X or 4X? I said, what I was a potential customer. What I am is not one now. I'm just kidding, I got a t-shirt and some jerk chicken, it was fine. It was fine. You know, I travel a lot for comedy, and one of my favorite things to do when I stop for comedy is travel to a Buc-ee's. Do we know Buc-ee's? Oh my gosh, do we not love it? It's just the great, if you don't know about a Buc-ee's, it's the best gas station convenience store you'll ever find. You gotta love a place that has a wall full of beef jerky and they sing when the brisket comes out the oven. Like, how do you not love that, right? But one thing I found is that you can't go to Buc-ee's on a weekend because it's just always too crowded. Y'all, I went once on a Sunday and it so happened to be Father's Day. It was so crowded, I thought they were giving out actual fathers. I'm like, you got an emotionally available one in the back? But I love to travel, and I love when I come back home and I get to have some quiet time home. And I was going to a movie, and I don't know if y'all noticed this, but movie trailers have changed a lot over the years. You know, if you're going to see a movie and they'll show you trailers similar to the movie that you're going to see. Like I was going to see Bad Boys 4, right? Thinking I'm going to see some trailers similar. I saw every scary horror movie trailer that's coming out for the next 10 years, right? It was like A Quiet Place, Venom, Maxine with 3 X's. And I'm like, hold on one second. My bladder and my panty liner can't carry this. It promised to protect me from light bladder leakage, not scary movie trailer. What are we doing? But I'll tell you this, I like any other fiscally responsible adult, I take my own snacks to the movies. Anybody else? Right? So one day I'm there, I'm going into the movies, and I go stop at Publix supermarket because I'm gonna take my snacks to the movies. So I so happened to say to the lady while I'm getting a sandwich, I said, I'm gonna take a sandwich inside the movie theater. And she said, you know what? I do the same thing, but you know what I do? I take my Yeti cup, I pour the water out, and then I pour alcohol in. And I'm like, ma'am, I'm just getting a pub sub. What you just described as a misdemeanor in the state of Tennessee. We are very different. We are very different. You know, I am happy to be out here, and I love the fact that we're here together to have a good night to laugh. Do we not love this? We not come together to laugh? And I'll tell you this, I love comedy and I love music because I feel like they are two art forms that bring people together, right? And my musical taste varies. Like, I like Barry Manilow, and I'm also from Brooklyn, New York, so I love Biggie Smalls, right? And I feel like I've learned a lot from both of them. Like, from Barry Manilow, I learned about this great love story between a showgirl named Lola and a bartender named Tony. And I learned that the hottest spot north of Havana is the Copacabana. Sing it if you know it. At the Copacabana, the hottest spot north of Havana. Is that not a great song? Really fun song, right? Fun song. But y'all, I also learned business acumen from Biggie Smalls in his drug selling song, The 10 Crack Commandments. Like Biggie's rule for number 7, which is so underrated, keep your family and your business completely separated. Now we get that, right? We got family members we love, but we don't necessarily trust, right? And then Biggie's rule for number 4, I know you heard this before, never get high on your own supply. Now I see some of you looking at me like, Tara, I don't know why you're telling me this because I don't sell crack. And that would be fair. But when I look in this audience, what I see are some parents and some grandparents that have helped some girls sell some Girl Scout cookies. And those Thin Mints are just as addictive as crack if you put them in the freezer. If you put them in the freezer. But I tell you this, I always find this very funny when I'm driving down the street, and I don't know if you have this happen to you. You're driving down the street and someone's pulling up alongside of you and they're playing the most angry and aggressive hip hop music you've ever heard in your life, and it's so loud in their car that it's shaking your car. Anybody ever have that? And every time that happens, anytime I look over to see who's driving, it will always be some kid in a luxury car looking like he just left lacrosse. And I want to turn to him and say, Elliot, why are you so angry? Was that Peloton ride not as challenging as you'd hope? Did Starbucks run out of green tea matcha? And the only thing speaking to your struggle right now is straight out of Compton? Go home and trade some Bitcoin stock. You'll be okay. I love that laugh, wherever that's coming from. Is that you, sir? You have a great laugh. Great laugh. But I tell you this, I love going to concerts, and I recently went to a concert for my favorite old school hip hop artist, Eric B. and Rakim. Now, I see there was no reactions, because clearly you don't know Rakim, greatest rapper of all time. But here's the thing, for the purposes of this joke, feel free to insert Fleetwood Mac. I know your people too. So I'm in the concert and I'm fist pumping and having a good time, forgetting that I was over 50 and overweight until the next morning when I had to negotiate between Tiger Bomb, Bengay, and prayer just to get back up, right? Kind of gave new meaning to the words hip hop. I don't know if you all saw recently, there was a study in the American Academy of Pediatrics that said that spanking your children could put them at risk for mental illness. Now I'm gonna go out on a limb and think that there were no old school mamas on the panel of the American Academy of Pediatrics. At least not the one that raised me. Because I grew up in the kind of household where you couldn't say the word lie. Like you couldn't call somebody a liar. That was like a curse word in our house. Now here's the thing, I'm over 50. My mother is older, shorter, and more arthritic, but that chick still got a backhand like Serena Williams, so I still don't use the word lie. Still don't use the word lie. You know, I've been doing comedy for a bit now. Some funny things happen to you when you do comedy, when people find out you do comedy. First thing they say is, tell me a joke. And I'm like, sure, what's your budget? And that usually stops that. Right? That stops that. But then, sometimes comedy just finds you, right? Like one day I'm driving down the street and a car is pulling up alongside of me, and I notice that the gentleman is motioning for me, and he says, roll your window down. So I roll my window down thinking something's wrong with my car, and I said, what's wrong? And he goes, I just want you to know that Jesus loves you. And I said, oh, thank you, brother. He loves you too. So I go to roll my window back up, and he goes, wait. Have you read the Book of Mormon? I said, that's what we're doing. I said, no, I haven't, but I've been to Provo once and I'm caught up on every episode of The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, so I think I'm good. Also, when did y'all get off the bikes and out the khakis? Like, what are we doing? Christians, we gotta step our game up. We gotta step our game up. I don't know if any of you all remember, I'm gonna take you back. So, is anybody here back working in offices? Anybody working in the office? Some people, and I want to take some of you back to a time when you worked in the office and you had to go to the bathroom. And let's just say you needed a minute. And your coworker came in and got in a stall next to you, and you realized that they need a minute too. Now you got this Mexican standoff going on in the bathroom. Trying to figure out who's gonna leave first. And you're hoping that your coworker doesn't realize it's you. But then you look down at your feet and you're wearing open-toe shoes and your foot is black. 'Cause you're black. And you're the only black person that works on it. You're like, uh-oh, the jig is up. Like I said, I meet a lot of interesting people doing comedy, and my first year doing comedy, I had a show in Shakopee, Minnesota, right? Minnesota? A lot of Minnesotans in the room. Why didn't y'all tell me that in April, there's a potential to have a blizzard in Minnesota? Because that's when I went to do my show. It was April, it was a blizzard, I was stunned. So I'm going back to the hotel, me and the other comedian, we're going back to our respective rooms. And he goes, if you want, I have some non-addictive heroin. So a few things. One, no. Two, one of the first things my mama made me promise her when I started doing comedy is that I would not do drugs. So my mama said I can, right? And then three, isn't that an oxymoron? Like non-addictive heroin? I don't know a lot about drug culture, but I would think that you would want to take the drug so that you can get some more, right? And then here's the other thing. Look at my body type. Do I look like I crave non-addictive heroin? Now, sir, if you got non-addictive tacos, what is your room number? I will bring the salsa and the queso. What are we doing? Very weird. So I've been having a tough time dating. Here's a pivot for you. I actually went out with a gentleman who ordered extra alcohol in his drink. Y'all, I didn't even know that was a thing. And I'm like, is my conversation that bad that he needs extra alcohol to talk to me? But then he also told me on that date that he had one testicle. And I said, sir, what's your end game here? Like, I don't know what we're doing, right? But you know what? I did have a ball on that date. Hey! Just one ball, just one ball. But my favorite had to be, I went to the movies once with a gentleman and the lights went down and he proceeded to pull out a bag of cocaine and snort it right there in the theater. Now y'all would have thought that have offended me, but I'm like, hey, to each his own. Y'all, I was more surprised by the fact that he didn't offer anybody any. Now don't get me wrong, I didn't want any, but I had shared my goobers earlier in the night. And that was a hardship on me. I'm like, if the man has a drug problem, he can get help for that. Not sharing your stuff, that's selfish. That's a character flaw. I can't do anything with that. Right? And ladies, I'm gonna make a hard shift, and if you're with this person, I don't want you to look directly at them after I say this, because I don't live here, and I can't take you home. But ladies, you ever notice how unattractive a man becomes when you find out he's broke? Don't look at him. Y'all don't even have a punchline for that. That's more of an observation. But I thought I did get it figured out recently. I was in the airport, and I was sitting down waiting for my flight, and I see a gentleman, and he's looking at me, and he's smiling. And then when I look at him, he would just look away, and this went on a couple of times. I was like, okay, let's go. Then the third time, he looked down near my feet, and I was like, okay, what's up with that? And y'all, then I realized I was sitting next to a phone charger. Ma'am, he wanted the phone charger, he didn't want me. So you know what I did? I went and plugged my phone in there. I didn't even need a charge, but you don't tease me like that. That's what we not gonna do. But you know, recently I went to go see a show at a theater, and a gentleman pulls up and he asks me what I'm going to see. And I tell him, and he says, thank you. And as he starts to walk away, he goes, oh, and by the way, you look pretty, and then walked away. And I said, I'm sorry, sir, I don't think we're done here. Because you don't tell me that I look pretty and walk away, because in my mind, we're engaged now. Only thing left for me to do is like pee on you and mark my territory. Silly man walking away. What is he doing? Yeah. And then also, I find that guys have a hard time following up. Like one time I looked at a guy, he looked at me, I smiled and he smiled, but he just kept staring. Now the problem with that is I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York. And where I'm from, if you give someone more than 3 seconds of direct eye contact, that constitutes a threat. So you either gotta rob me or ask me for my phone number, but you gotta do something I'm used to. You gotta used to. You know, I think you all seem like a lovely crowd. I may be scouting you out later because I need some new friends. I don't know if anybody feels like this, but I have these kind of friends who say things like, can you pick me up something and I will reimburse you later? And is it me or do you never get your money back, right? And what I find is that the requests always start off small. Like, can you pick me up a Pepsi and some potato chips? I'm like, okay, I can do that. I got paid last week, but you want like a 20 ounce, right? Like, that's all we're doing, right? And then the requests start growing in size. And my friend says, hey, you gonna pass P.F. Chang's on your way here, right? You can pick me up some Chinese food? I'm like, P.F. Chang's? That's like the Ruth Chris of Chinese food. Can't do that. And then one time, my friend who was being ordained into the ministry, she said, hey, I need you to do me a favor on your way here. I need you to pick me up this Bible, and it costs $50. And I said, I got to tell you something. I don't think you're walking with the Lord. Because Jesus knows what I have in checking. And he would not be making that request of me. But my grandmother was the best with it. She would say things like, TT, I need you to pick me up some Haagen-Dazs. That's how she get me. She'll nickname me. TT, I need you to pick me up some Haagen-Dazs, and I'll pay you when you get here. I never got my money, right? So much so that my grandmother died 2 years ago. I leaned into the lawyer. I said, look at here, is there a line item in here somewhere about my Haagen-Dazs? I never did it, never got it. But let me ask you this. I don't know if they have this down here in Sarasota, but are they putting this pressure on you in supermarkets where they're asking you if you want to round up your change for charity? Now this next question is going to be more rhetorical than not. But who says no to that? Don't answer. I want the people to judge. You're like, I do. Now here's the thing, it's not that I'm not a charitable person, I just don't like to feel pressure to give to charity, and I feel pressure in this moment because the woman in front of me just rounded up her change for charity, and the guy behind me is looking at me like, seriously, you're not gonna round up your change for charity? Now here's the thing, if my purchase comes to $8.99, that's all you. You don't even have to ask. But if that comes to $10.01, I need to think about that for a minute. Because I don't always have round up money. So I said, well, what causes does my change go to support? And they said the American Heart Association and the American Cancer Society. I said, those are two very good, worthwhile causes. I said, but do I get to decide where my change goes? Because I think I'd like to donate my change to the National Association of People Who Don't Judge People by what they see in other people's shopping carts. It's a thing. Because I'm pretty sure I saw you roll your eyes when you saw my vanilla bean Haagen-Dazs in that cart. But did you see I had kale in that cart too? I had kale. So in my supermarket, they stopped asking me to round up my change for charity. They gave me the website for Instacart. And y'all, I had to go home and Google how to cook kale, because I really only put that in the cart for show. But I did have a favorite supermarket. Like I said, I used to live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I had a favorite supermarket when I lived there called Compare. And it was this one-stop shopping Latino mecca, right? It was the only supermarket in Charlotte where you can get exotic fruits and vegetables, you can buy hot food, you can buy a cake, you can buy some jewelry, you can pay your taxes, you can buy some clothes, you can enter a sweepstakes to win a car, you can get the car notarized, you can watch some telenovelas in the back while you wait for the car to get notarized, you can call Guatemala. And y'all, I went a few weeks ago, and because I asked somebody nicely, somebody waxed my chin hairs and scheduled my next colonoscopy. I'm just saying. They're not doing that everywhere. They're not doing that everywhere. You know, I mentioned earlier about being single, and I find, I don't know, any single folks in here, my single people, where you at? Some single people, and I don't know if you find this, man, but I find that being single can be inconvenient, and I'll tell you how. You know, and I always find it to be inconvenient when I have storms, because what will happen is the power will go out, and the smoke detector will try to reset itself, and I don't have a ladder high enough to get up there to change the battery, nor a husband who can help me do it. So now what this means is I need to go to Walmart in the middle of the night, and I gotta take the rollers out my hair and put my bra back on. Because every woman in here knows when you go home and take your bra off, the night was done, right? Right, ladies? Night is over, right? So I'm in Walmart, and I see a 3-foot-high construction-grade ladder, and I said to the clerk, I said, sir, how much is the ladder? And he said, it's $150. And I said, well, Dave Ramsey said that's not my budget this month. And now, not too far from it, I see a 2-step step stool. And I said, well, how much is the step stool? And he said, it's $28. And I said, okay, that's more like it. But I also noticed that it says on that step stool, weight capacity, 200 pounds. So I'm looking at the step stool, and I look at the clerk, and I said, so we think that's like a hard 200, or is that more like a suggested weight? And if it is a hard 200, what's the warranty on this thing? And y'all, I don't have time to go to the plus-size step stool store, which I'm sure it exists, because why would it not, right? And if it doesn't, that's like a Shark Tank pitch just waiting to happen. So y'all, I get this step stool home. Turns out it was a hard 200. So now I gotta take the rollers back out my hair, put my bra back on, head on down to Walmart, get me a 3-foot-high construction-grade ladder, some ibuprofen, and I just got me another Kit Kat Duo on my way because I felt like I earned that. Listen, you guys have been amazing. My name is Tara.
Ladies and gentlemen, one more time, Tara Brown!